Hey Chip, today is the 17th of December, so 5 days to go until your birthday, 17th of December 2020. Exciting time. So it's Thursday today, and your birthday is next Tuesday. So you must be getting excited in Japan now. I'm getting excited for you too. Can't believe you're going to be 8 years old soon. That's such a big age. It's certainly flown by since you left. I remember your last birthday here. You was turning to 5, I think, because you had 6, 7, and 8 in Japan. So when you was turning 5, you had a party in this house, and we invited 8 people. But unfortunately, all of them was busy, and only one could come. I think a little boy called Ethan, I think his name was. He came and with his mum, and we had a lovely time. And you got lots of Lego for your birthday, and we made Lego, and you had cake, and you took a photo by the radiator downstairs, which I've got somewhere still. That was the last birthday I got to spend with you. But I know that you are having a nice life in Japan now with your car, so that makes me happy. And I'm hoping to spend a bit of time with you on your birthday to see how you're doing. Enough reminiscing. Let's carry on with the story. So if you remember, we're doing George's Marvellous Medicine, and we've read this book a few times now. And like I was saying in the last one, we were sat literally just here with our camp a few years ago. Okay. Anyways, let's carry on. The next chapter is called George Begins to Make the Medicine. George took an enormous saucepan out of the cupboard and placed it on the kitchen table. "George!" came the shrill voice from the next room. "What are you doing?" "Nothing, Grandma," he called out. "You needn't think I can't hear you just because you've closed the door. You're rattling the saucepans." "I'm just tidying the kitchen, Grandma." Then there was silence. George had absolutely no doubts whatsoever about how he was going to make his famous medicine. He wasn't going to fool about wondering whether to put in a little bit of this or a little bit of that. Quite simply, he was going to put in everything he could find. There would be no messing about, no hesitating, no wondering whether a particular thing would knock the old girl sideways or not. The rule would be this: whatever he saw, if it was runny or powdery or gooey, in it went. Nobody had ever made a medicine like that before. If it didn't actually cure Grandma, then it would anyways cause some exciting results. It would be worth watching. George decided to work his way around the various rooms one at a time and see what they had to offer. He would go first to the bathroom. There are lots of funny things in a bathroom, so upstairs he went, carrying the enormous two-handled saucepan before him. In the bathroom, he gazed longingly at the famous and dreaded medicine cupboard, but he didn't go near it. What else has he found there? It was the only thing in the entire house he was forbidden to touch. He had made his solemn promises to his parents about this, and he wasn't going to break them. There were things in there, they had told him, that could actually kill a person, and although he was out to give Grandma a pretty fearful fiery mouthful, he didn't really want a dead body on his hands. George put the saucepan on the floor and went to work. Number 1 was a bottle labelled Golden Gloss Hair Shampoo. He emptied it into the pan. "That ought to wash her tummy nice and clean," he said. Ooh, who wants to take shampoo? Right, let's go. He took a full tube of toothpaste and squeezed out the whole lot of it in one long worm. "Maybe that will brighten up those horrid brown teeth of hers," he said. There was an aerosol can of super foam shaving soap belonging to his father. George loved playing with aerosols. He pressed the button and kept his finger on it until there was nothing left. A wonderful mountain of white foam built up in the giant saucepan. With his fingers, he scooped out the contents of a jar of vitamin-enriched face cream. In went a small bottle of scarlet nail varnish. If the toothpaste doesn't clean her teeth, George said, then this will paint them as red as roses. He found another jar of creamy stuff labelled hair remover. Smear it on your legs, it said, and allow to remain for 5 minutes. George tipped it all into the saucepan. There was a bottle with the yellow stuff inside it called Dishworth's famous dandruff cure. In it went. There was something called Brilli-Dent for cleaning false teeth. It was a white powder. In that went too. He found another aerosol can. Nevermore Ponking deodorant spray. Guaranteed, it said, to keep away unpleasant body smells for a whole day. She could use plenty of that, George said as he sprayed the entire canful into the saucepan. Liquid paraffin, the next one was called. It was a big bottle. He hadn't the faintest idea what it did to you, but he poured it in anyway. Then, he thought, looking around him, was about all from the bathroom. On his mother's dressing table in the bedroom, George found yet another lovely aerosol can. It was called Helga's Hair Set. Hold 12 inches away from the hair and spray lightly. He squirted the whole lot into the saucepan. He did enjoy squirting these aerosols. There was a bottle of perfume called Flowers of Turnips. It smelled of old cheese. In it went, and in too went a large round box of powder. It was called Pink Plaster. There was a powder puff on top, and he threw that in as well for luck. He found a couple of lipsticks. He pulled the greasy red things out of their little cases and added them to the mixture. The bedroom had nothing more to offer, so George carried the enormous saucepan downstairs again and trotted into the laundry room, where the shelves were full of all kinds of household items. Just want to check I've not missed a page. I don't think I have, but maybe. No, I think I've done it all right. So, this is where he must be going downstairs, because look, this looks like the laundry. The first one he took down was a large box of super white for automatic washing machines. Dirt, it said, will disappear like magic. George didn't know whether Grandma was automatic or not, but she was certainly a dirty old woman. So she'd better have all of it, he said, tipping in the whole box full. Then there was a big tin of Waxwell floor polish. It removes filth and foul messes from your floor and leaves everything shiny bright, it said. George scooped the orange-coloured wax stuff out of the tin and plonked it in the pan. There was a round cardboard carton labelled flea powder for dogs. Keep well away from the dog's food, it said, because this powder, if eaten, will make the dog explode. Good, said George, pouring it all into the saucepan. He found a box of canary seed on the shelf. Perhaps it will make the old bird sing, he said, and in that went. Next, George explored the box with shoe cleaning materials, brushes and tins and dusters. Well now, he thought, Grandma's medicine is brown, so my medicine must also be brown, or she'll smell a rat. The way to colour it, he decided, would be with brown shoe polish. The large tin he chose was labelled dark tan. Splendid! He scooped it all out with an old spoon and plopped it into the pan. He would stir it up later. On his way back to the kitchen, George saw a bottle of gin standing on the sideboard. Grandma was very fond of gin. She was allowed to have a small nip of it every evening. Now he would give her a treat. He would pour in the whole bottle. He did. Back in the kitchen, George put the huge saucepan on the table and went over to the cupboard that served as a larder. The shelves were bulging with bottles and jars of every sort. He chose the following and emptied them one by one into the saucepan: a tin of curry powder, a tin of mustard powder, a bottle of extra hot chili sauce, a tin of black peppercorns, a bottle of horseradish. There, he said, that should do it. So horseradish sauce. Horseradish is like wasabi. George came the screechy voice from the next room. Who are you talking to in there? What are you up to? Nothing, Grandma, absolutely nothing, he called back. Is it time for my medicine yet? No, Grandma, not for about half an hour. Well, just so you don't forget it. I won't, Grandma, George answered. I promise I won't. Right, the next chapter is called Animal Pills. At this point, George suddenly had an extra good wheeze. Although the medicine cupboard in the house was forbidden ground, what about the medicines his father kept on the shelf in the shed next to the hen house? The animal medicines. What about those? Nobody had ever told him he mustn't touch them. Let's face it, George said to himself, hairspray and shaving cream and shoe polish are all very well, and they will no doubt cause some splendid explosions inside the old geezer, but what the magic mixture now needs is a touch of the real stuff, real pills and real tonics, to give it punch and muscle. George picked up the heavy 3/4 full saucepan and carried it out of the back door. He crossed the farmyard and headed straight for the shed alongside the hen house. He knew his father wouldn't be there. He was out haymaking in one of the meadows. George entered the dusty old shed and put the saucepan on the bench. Then he looked up at look at this medicine shelf. There were 5 big bottles there. Two were full of pills, 2 were full of runny stuff, and 1 was full of powder. I'll use them all, George said. Grandma needs them. Boy, does she need them. The first bottle he took down contained an orange-coloured powder. The label said, for chickens with foul pest, hen gripe, sore beaks, gammy legs, cockolitis, egg trouble, broodiness or loss of feathers. Mix 1 spoonful only with each bucket of feed. Well, George said aloud to himself as he tipped the whole bottle full, the old bird won't be losing any feathers after she's had a dose of this. The next bottle he took down had about 500 gigantic purple pills in it. For horses with hoarse throats, it said on the label. The horse-throated horse should suck 1 pill twice a day. Grandma may not have a hoarse throat, George said, but she's certainly got a sharp tongue. Maybe they'll cure that instead. Into the saucepan went the 500 gigantic purple pills. Then there was a bottle of thick yellowish liquid for cows, bulls and bullocks, the label said. Will cure cowpox, cow mange, crumpled horns, bad breath in bulls, earache, toothache, headache, hoofaache, tailache and sore udders. That grumpy old cow in the living room has every one of those rotten illnesses, George said. She'll need it all. With a slop and a gurgle, the yellow liquid splashed into the now nearly full saucepan. The next bottle contained a brilliant red liquid. Sheep dip, it said on the label, for sheep with sheep rot and for getting rid of ticks and fleas. Mix 1 spoonful in 1 gallon of water and slosh it over the sheep. Caution, do not make the mixture any stronger or the wool will fall out and the animal will be naked. By gum, said George, how I'd love to walk in and slosh it all over Grandma and watch the ticks and fleas go jumping off her. But I can't, I mustn't. So she'll have to drink it instead. He poured the bright red medicine into the saucepan. The last bottle on the shelf was full of pale green pills. Pig pills, the label announced. For... Got an itchy eye. Pigs with pork prickles, tender trotters, bristle blight and swine sickness. Give 1 pill per day. In severe cases, 2 pills may be given, but more than that will make the pig rock and roll. Just the stuff, said George, for that miserable old pig back there in the house. She'll need a very big dose. He tipped in all the green pills, hundreds and hundreds of them, into the saucepan. There was an old stick lying on the bench that had been used for stirring paint. George picked it up and started to stir his marvellous concoction. The mixture was as thick as cream, and as he stirred and stirred, many wonderful colours rose up from the depths and blended together, pinks, blues, greens, yellows and browns. George went on stirring until it was all well mixed, but even so there were still hundreds of pills lying on the bottom that hadn't melted, and there was his mother's splendid powder puff floating on the surface. I shall have to boil it all up, George said. "One good quick boil on the stove is all it needs." And with that he staggered back towards the house with the enormous saucepan. On the way, he passed the garage, so he went in to see if he could find any other interesting things. He added the following: half a pint of engine oil to keep Grandma's engine going smoothly, some antifreeze to keep her radiator from freezing up in the winter, a handful of grease to grease her cracking joints, then back to the kitchen. Right, the next chapter is called The Cook-Up. Look at him, he's got a proper big saucepan, isn't it? It's huge. In the kitchen, George put the saucepan on the stove and turned up the gas flame underneath it as high as it would go. "George," said the awful voice from the next room, "it's time for my medicine." "Not yet, Grandma," George called back. "There's still 20 minutes before 11 o'clock. "What mischief are you up to in there now?" Granny screeched. "I hear noises." George thought it best not to answer this one. He found a long wooden spoon in the kitchen drawer and began stirring hard. The stuff in the pot got hotter and hotter. Soon the marvellous mixture began to froth and foam. A rich blue smoke, the colour of peacocks, rose from the surface of the liquid, and a fiery, fearsome smell filled the kitchen. It made George choke and splutter. It was a smell unlike any he had smelled before. He looks happy though. It was a brutal and bewitching smell, spicy and staggering, fierce and frenzied, full of wizardry and magic. Whenever he got a whiff of it up his nose, firecrackers went off in his skull and electric prickles ran along the backs of his legs. It was wonderful to stand there stirring this amazing mixture and to watch it smoking blue and bubbling and frothing and foaming as though it were alive. At one point, he could have sworn he saw bright sparks flashing in the swirling foam. Woohoo! And suddenly, George found himself dancing around the steaming pot, chanting strange words that came into his head out of nowhere. "Fiery broth and witch's brew, foamy froth and riches blue, fume and spume and spoondrift spray, fizzle, swizzle, shoot, hooray! Shout, hooray! Watch it sloshing, swashing, sploshing, hear it hissing, squishing, spissing. Grandma better start to pray." Hey, hee, hee. Right, the next chapter is called Brown Paint. George turned off the heat under the saucepan. He must leave plenty of time for it to cool down. When all the steam and froth had gone away, he peered into the giant pan to see what colour the great medicine now was. It was a deep and brilliant blue. "It needs more brown in it," George said. It simply must be brown or she'll get suspicious." George ran outside and dashed into his father's tool shed where all the paints were kept. There was a row of cans on the shelf, all colours: black, green, red, pink, white and brown. He reached for the can of brown. The label said simply, "Dark brown gloss paint, 1 quart. He took a screwdriver and prized off the lid. The can was 3/4 full. He rushed it back to the kitchen. He poured the whole lot into the saucepan. The saucepan was now full to the brim. Very gently, George stirred the paint into the mixture with the long wooden spoon. Aha! It was all turning brown, a lovely, rich, creamy brown. "Where's that medicine of mine, boy?" came the voice from the living room. "You're forgetting me. You're doing it on purpose. I shall tell your mother." "I'm not forgetting you, Grandma," George called back. "I'm thinking of you all the time. But there are still 10 minutes to go." "You're a nasty little maggot," the voice screeched back. "You're a lazy and disobedient little worm, and you're growing too fast." George fetched the bottle of Grandma's real medicine from the sideboard. He took out the cork and tipped it all down the sink. Then he filled the bottle with his own magic mixture by dipping a small jug into the saucepan and using it as a pourer. He replaced the cork. Had it cooled down enough yet? Not quite. He held the bottle under the tap for a couple of minutes. The label came off in the wet, but that didn't matter. He dried the bottle with a dishcloth. All was now ready. This was it. The great moment had arrived. "Medicine time, Grandma," he called out. "I should hope so too," came the grumpy reply. The silver tablespoon in which the medicine was always given lay ready on the kitchen board. George picked it up. Holding the spoon in one hand and the bottle in the other, he advanced into the living room. You like this bit when we read it before. Here we go. And do you know what this chapter is called? Grandma Gets the Medicine. Grandma sat hunched in her chair by the window. The wicked little eyes followed George closely as he crossed the room towards her. "You're late," she snapped. "I don't think I am, Grandma." "Don't interrupt me in the middle of a sentence," she shouted. "But you finished your sentence, Grandma." "There you go again," she cried. "Always interrupting and arguing. You really are a tiresome little boy. What's the time?" "It's exactly 11 o'clock, Grandma." "You're lying as usual. Stop talking so much and give me my medicine. Shake the bottle first, then pour it into the spoon and make sure it's a whole spoonful." "Are you going to gulp it down all in one go?" George asked her. "Or will you sip it?" "What I do is none of your business," the old woman said. "Fill the spoon." As George removed the cork and began very slowly to pour the thick brown stuff into the spoon, he couldn't help thinking back upon all the mad and marvellous things that had gone into the making of this crazy stuff. The shaving soap, the hair remover, the dandruff cure, the automatic washing machine powder, the flea powder for the dogs, the shoe polish, the black pepper, the horseradish sauce, and all the rest of them, not to mention the powerful animal pills and powders and liquids, and the brown paint. "Open your mouth wide, Grandma," he said, "and I'll pop it in." The old hag opened her small wrinkled mouth, showing disgusting pale brown teeth. "Here we go," George cried out. "Swallow it down." He pushed the spoon into her mouth and tipped the mixture down her throat. Then he stepped back to watch the results. It was worth watching. Grandma yelled, "Owie!" and her whole body shot up, whoosh, into the air. It was exactly as though someone had pushed an electric wire through the underneath of her chair and switched on the current. Up she went like a jack-in-the-box, and she didn't come down. She stayed there, suspended in mid-air, about 2 feet up, still in a sitting position. But... here we go. What's going to happen? Oh my goodness, look! She's completely off her seat by about twice the height. Rigid now, frozen, quivering, the eyes bulging, the hair standing straight up on end. "Is something wrong, Grandma?" George asked her politely. "Are you all right?" Suspended up there in space, the old girl was beyond speaking. The shock that George's marvellous mixture had given her must have been tremendous. You'd have thought she'd swallowed a red-hot poker the way she took off from that chair. Oh my goodness me. So, then down she came with a plop back into her seat. "Call the fire brigade!" she shouted suddenly. "My stomach's on fire!" "It's just the medicine, Grandma," George said. "It's good, strong stuff." "Fire!" the old woman yelled. At this point, Hugo, you would be absolutely laughing so much when we read this before. "Fire in the basement! Get a bucket! Man the hoses! Do something quick!" "Call it, Grandma," George said, but he got a bit of a shock when he saw smoke coming out of her mouth and out of her nostrils. Clouds of black smoke were coming out of her nose and blowing around the room. "By golly, you really are on fire," George said. "Of course I'm on fire," she yelled. "I'll be burned to a crisp. I'll be fried to a frizzle. I'll be boiled like a beetroot." George ran into the kitchen and came back with a jug of water. "Open your mouth, Grandma," he cried. He could hardly see her for the smoke, but he managed to pour half a jugful down her throat. A sizzling sound, the kind you get if you hold a hot frying pan under a cold tap, came up from deep in Grandma's stomach. The old hag bucked and shied and snorted. She gasped and gurgled. Spouts of water came... She is, oh my goodness, she's going, we haven't got to that bit yet, shooting out of her, and the smoke cleared away. "The fire's out," George announced proudly. "You'll be all right now, Grandma." "All right," she yelled. "Who's all right? There's a Jackie Jumpers in my tummy. There's a Squigglers in my belly. There's bangers in my bottom." She began bouncing up and down in the chair. Quite obviously she was not very comfortable. You'll find it's doing you a lot of good, that medicine, Grandma, George said. Good, she screamed. Doing me good, it's killing me. Then she began to bulge. She was swelling. She was puffing up all over. Someone was pumping her up. That's how it looked. Was she going to explode? Her face was turning from purple to green. But wait! She had a puncture somewhere. George could hear the hiss of escaping air. She stopped swelling. She was going down. She was slowly getting thinner again, shrinking back and back, slowly to her shrivelly old self. How's things, Grandma? George said. No answer. Then a funny thing happened. Grandma's body gave a sudden sharp twist and a sudden sharp jerk, and she flipped herself clear out of the chair and landed nearly on her 2 feet on the carpet. Neatly on her 2 feet on the carpet. That's terrific, Grandma, George cried. You haven't stood up like that for years. Look at you. You're standing up all on your own and you're not even using a stick. Grandma didn't even hear him. The frozen pop-eyed look was back with her again now. She was miles away in another world. Marvellous medicine, George told himself. He found it fascinating to stand there watching what it was doing to the old hag. What next, he wondered. He soon found out. Suddenly she began to grow. It was quite slow at first, just a very gradual inching upwards, up, inch by inch, getting taller and taller, about an inch every few seconds, and in the beginning George didn't notice it. But when she had passed the 5'6" mark and she was going up towards being 6 feet tall, George gave a jump and shouted, Hey, Grandma, you're growing up. Hang on, Grandma, you better stop now or you'll be hitting the ceiling. But Grandma didn't stop. It was a truly fantastic sight, this ancient, scrawny old woman getting taller and taller, longer and longer, thinner and thinner, as though she was a piece of elastic being pulled upwards by invisible bands. When the top of her head actually touched the ceiling, George thought she was bound to stop. Oh my goodness! But she didn't. There was a sort of scrunching noise and bits of plaster and cement came running down. Hadn't you better stop now, Grandma? George said. Daddy just had this whole room repainted. But there was no stopping her now. Soon her head and shoulders had completely disappeared through the ceiling and she was still going. George dashed upstairs to his own bedroom, and there she was coming up through the floor like a mushroom. Whoopee! She shouted, finding her voice at last. Hallelujah! Here I come. Steady on, Grandma, George said. With a hey nonny no and up we go, she shouted. Just watch me grow. This is my room, George said. Look at the mess you're making. Terrific medicine, she cried. Give me some more. She's dotty as a donut, George thought. Come on, boy, give me some more, she yelled. Dish it out, I'm slowing down. George was still clutching the medicine bottle in one hand and the spoon in the other. Oh well, he thought, why not? He poured out a second dose and popped it into her mouth. Oh-wee! She screamed, and up she went again. Her feet were still on the floor downstairs in the living room, but her head was moving quickly towards the ceiling of the bedroom. I'm on my way, boy, she called down to George. Just watch me go. That's the attic above you, Grandma, George called out. I'd keep out of there. It's full of bugs and boggles. Crash! The girl's head went through the ceiling as though it were butter. George stood in his bedroom gazing at the shambles. There was a big hole in the floor and, oh my goodness, another in the ceiling, and sticking up like a post between the two was the middle part of Grandma. Her legs were in the room below, her head in the attic. I'm still going, came the old screechy voice from the up above. Give me another dose, my boy, and let's go through the roof. No, Grandma, no, George called back. You're busting up the whole house. To heck with the house, she shouted. I want some fresh air. I haven't been outside for 20 years. By golly, she is going through the roof, George told himself. He ran downstairs. He rushed out of the back door into the yard. It would be simply awful, he thought, if she bashed up the roof as well. His father would be furious, and he, George, would get the blame. He had made the medicine. He had given her too much. "Don't come through the roof, Grandma," he prayed. "Please don't." And the next chapter is called The Brown Hen. And she did come through the roof. Oh my goodness, look at that. That's crazy, but she looks so happy. And look at the length of that neck and shoulders and arms. Right, I think that's a good place to stop for today. But we've done well. Page 50. We're nearly halfway through the book now. Okay, well, I hope you enjoyed that reading. I forgot to say at the start, and it was a very happy moment. I've not opened it yet, but I received a present from you today. You sent me a present with your car's help, for all the way from Japan, and I'm really happy, and I can't wait to open it. But I want to speak to you before I do, because I think I should probably wait till Christmas Day. But nevertheless, yeah, thank you so much for doing that. It's such a nice thing, and yeah, I can't wait. I've still got, actually, look, this is my desk over here, and on my desk, look, I've got a calendar, the same one as you. I need to make you a new one. I've not made another one yet, but look, there you are. That was your Christmas when you was 2 years old. Look how happy you are with a car. You've got this little shopping trolley, and you've got all these bits. That was from Auntie Sam, actually, and look, there's a Christmas tree in the background. What else? This was your little kitchen area, and then you had lots of toys there as well. And look at this one. So I've had this on my desk all year, and it says Merry Christmas, and you sent me this last year, and look inside it says message to Otto, Daisuki Totomo, Hugo, and then Haiku Kitane. Obviously when that card was made, when you wrote that card, there wasn't anything about COVID-19, because I was supposed to come and see you in May. I had the ticket booked and everything, and then obviously I couldn't come. So that was quite sad. Oh yeah, one other thing I'm going to show you. Look at this. This was something that my friend Nikki got me. Look at this. You ready? And look who's on there. It's me and you. It's lovely, isn't it? And look, if you press the button, you can change the colour. See? You can have it white or yellow. I'll turn it off. I'm going to try it again with it. So there's the white one. And it's gone off. And there's the white. And look, there's the yellow one. It's more like the moon now, isn't it? There we are again. That was us in Japan, wasn't it, when we read the story? Right. Enough for today. I hope you enjoy this video when you watch it, if you watch it. And I'm looking forward, because Christmas and birthday is soon to come. Birthday and Christmas is soon to come. All right. Take care. I love you lots. Bye.